Hello and welcome to the Game Cupboard. My name's Rick and today I would like to talk to you about Streets of Rage 4. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Now that the begging's over, let's begin. I have to confess, I don't have much history with the Streets of Rage series. I played the first game quite a lot when I was a kid, as it was the two-player game that every Mega Drive owner had in the early 90s, but I never actually finished it, despite getting to the final boss several times. It was too difficult for me, and when the next two in the series released later on, I just assumed they'd be too difficult for me too, and avoided them. And on top of not having much nostalgia for the series, I wouldn't even call myself a fan of the genre. The last side-scrolling beat-em-up I played was the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World game, and I was awful at that. So when the news that Streets of Rage 4 was in development hit, I brushed it aside. In fact, I wasn't even going to bother with it. Why would I? This isn't a game aimed at me. But then friends began to play it, and YouTubers like Happy Console Gamer and Boomstick Gaming was singing its praises, and I ended up getting caught up in the hype for a game I originally had no interest in. And then I bought it. And holy shit, I'm glad I did. In a year where so far we've had the likes of Animal Crossing, Doom Eternal, Resident Evil 3 and the Final Fantasy VII remake, Streets of Rage 4 is one of the best games I've played. The first thing that caught my attention, unsurprisingly, was the visuals. They are absolutely gorgeous. Art director Ben Fiquet and his team have done an incredible job at updating the designs of the original characters and managed to swap pixel art for these beautiful hand-drawn images that look contemporary and instantly recognisable. Each stage has its own personality and evolves as you progress, with background and environments organically changing as you get closer to the stage boss, helping to tell the story of Wood Oak City. The first stage itself pays brilliant homage to the first stage of Streets of Rage 1 and instantly transported me back to 1991. And just like being 6 years old again, the game kicked the absolute crap out of me. Streets of Rage 4 is a tough game, but it is fair. Mostly. There are several modes to try out, including story and arcade modes, as well as boss rush and multiplayer battle modes. There's an option to play with friends or strangers online too, but I didn't have a very positive experience with that. When I tried to join random games, the server either couldn't find anyone playing or just wouldn't connect me at all. And when I eventually managed to organise a game with a friend, we were swamped with lag issues that caused us some real problems in later stages. We were both playing on PS4 Pros and had pretty good internet connections. I regularly played Monster Hunter World online with no issues whatsoever, so I'm not sure what the problem was. I've asked around friends who are playing it too on different systems, and they haven't noticed any issues whatsoever, so it could just have been bad luck on my part, but I thought it would be worth mentioning anyway, because it did sully my enjoyment somewhat. There are 5 difficulty settings to choose from, with normal being where I spent most of my time, and at the beginning, even that felt too tough for me at times. But I'm a lot older now than I was the last time I played a Streets of Rage game. I knew this was a game I'd struggle with if I just ran into it head first, so I approached each stage slowly, learning the complexities of a simple combat system, learning enemy spawn spots and attack animations, learning the rhythm of the game and how it's meant to be played. And then it hit me. This is how I should have been playing almost 3 decades ago. Suddenly, after decades of avoiding the series, the combat made sense, and the combat in Streets of Rage 4 is absolutely superb. Each impact feels incredibly satisfying, and the animations of the main characters are super smooth. By design, the animations of the enemies are not as smooth, and have been animated with fewer frames than the player characters. However, this isn't a complaint. The reduced frames makes noticing specific attacks so much easier and gives you a fighting chance against the countless waves being thrown at you. The combat felt instantly familiar, but smoother and crunchier, with the subtle vibrations of the controller selling each impact that much more than it could have in the 90s. And the moveset will feel instantly familiar to fans of the series. You have your standard attack, which will roll out a basic combo when hammered, and the direction an attack will change if you're pressing forward or back. Walking into an enemy will make your character grab them, and the follow-up will change depending on which direction you're holding when you press the attack button. You can pick up weapons off the ground, or even catch them out of the air and use them to attack for a damage bonus. There are also star attacks that can be activated by pressing both attack buttons together to unleash a special attack that doesn't feel as powerful as I would have liked it to. They're good to get you out of danger, but they're not room clearers, and I often found myself trying to clear stages without using them so I could collect extra points at the end. But the most interesting aspect of the combat comes from the special attacks. Holding a direction and pressing the special attack button will activate an offensive attack, which can be absolutely devastating when chained with a big combo, and pressing the special attack button while remaining stationary and not holding a direction will activate a defensive special attack, granting you momentary invincibility and a crowd clearing attack that can be an absolute lifesaver. However, Activating a special attack drains your health slightly, causing the reduced health bar to turn green. Hitting an enemy with regular attacks will fill the green part of your health, but if you get hit before you recover your health, you not only lose the regular amount of health, but you use the health you are unable to recover, giving the special attacks a real risk-reward feel and stopping you from spamming the specials. I love this mechanic because it adds another element of strategy to the combat, and it can be just as much of a hindrance as a help. More than once I'd find myself swamped by waves of enemies, spamming special to clear them only to realise too late that my health bar was mostly green and one more hit could kill me, only to then lose a life as an enemy gets a cheap attack in. And that's my only problem with Streets of Rage 4's combat. 90% of the time when I get hit it's because I made a mistake. A poorly timed special, or locking myself into a combo when I shouldn't have, even getting overconfident and letting my mind wander somewhere. It's my fault and I hold my hands up to it. But then there's the remaining 10%. There are times when Streets of Rage 4 feels infuriatingly cheap. Whether it be the red-headed thugs who run at you with knives and register a hit if they just bump into you with their shoulder, the punk dudes who slide in from half a screen away and at times feel unavoidable, flying kicks and headbutts that just seem to home in on you, and sometimes just the sheer amount of enemies on screen at once, swarming you with the sole purpose of whittling your health and lives down as quickly and as cheaply as possible. As I said, a good 90% of the game feels absolutely fair, but more than a few times I found myself shouting bullshit at the screen for one reason or another. So in that regard, it has absolutely nailed the feeling of a game from the 90s. Initially, there are 4 characters to choose from, and one who unlocks as the story progresses, with an additional 12 characters to unlock through repeated playthroughs that will make fans of the original trilogy extremely happy. Each character feels completely different too, with their own strengths and weaknesses. Axel is slow moving but has quick combos and great crowd control. Blaze and Cherry are quicker, lighter characters with an emphasis on juggle combos, and Floyd is a slow-moving juggernaut with a focus on devastating grab and smash combos. But I found Adam to be the most well-rounded of the roster, with a nice balance between speed and attack damage. I won't mention the unlockable characters here, because even though most of them are common knowledge, there are still going to be people watching this video who don't know, and I don't want to be responsible for ruining the surprise for them. With graphics and gameplay covered, the only thing to talk about is the music, which is arguably just as important to a Streets of Rage game as the combat. Despite not playing the original Streets of Rage for around 20 years, I can still remember the soundtrack like I listened to it yesterday. Yuzo Koshiro composed one of the absolute greatest soundtracks of all time that sounds just as good today as it did when it debuted in 1991. And the first 3 pieces of music you hear in the game are by Koshiro. And this decision alone goes a long way to sell the fact that Streets of Rage is back. If that wasn't enough, Motohiro Kawashima, who worked on the soundtracks for Streets of Rage 2 and 3 with Koshiro, who's also lent his talents to the soundtrack. And there's even a contribution from legendary composer Yoko Shinomura, who created soundtracks for the likes of Final Fight and Street Fighter 2, as well as the Kingdom Hearts series. It's an impressive roster to be sure. But the meat of the music credit goes to Olivier de Riviere, who has done an absolutely incredible job of creating a contemporary soundtrack that not only fits with the established Streets of Rage sound design, but also holds its own against the tracks delivered by Koshiro and Kawashima respectively. The standout track for me, Call the Cops, with its driving hip-hop drums and powerful synth, sounds like it was ripped straight out of the 90s. It's an absolutely superb track and has already found its way into my daily music rotation. I am genuinely surprised by how much I enjoy Streets of Rage 4. From the beginning of the very first level, I felt instantly at home, which is an incredible thing to feel considering that I haven't played the original game for 20 years or so. But it is this reliance on nostalgia that is ultimately Streets of Rage 4's biggest setback. In its quest to recreate the experience of the old games, developer Lizard Cube literally painted themselves into a corner. The amount of palette swapped and repeated enemies toward the end of the game gets tiresome. I fully understand that in itself is a tribute to the original games, which had to use palette swaps as a way to sell the illusion of enemy variation due to memory limitations. But Streets of Rage 4 doesn't have to worry about such limitations, and it makes this simple act of homage feel like a wasted opportunity to inject some original characters, or even unused characters from the original games. The worst part is, a quick look in the extras menu showcases a plethora of unused character concepts that could easily have replaced several of the palette swapped enemies while still successfully paying tribute to the original trilogy. Hopefully this means they're saving enemies for a Streets of Rage 5, or even some DLC, as I would love to see what else the team at Lizard Cube can bring to this universe when they allow themselves the freedom to think outside of what has already been established. Overall, I absolutely loved my time with Streets of Rage 4. If you're a fan of this series, I cannot recommend this game enough. It is an absolute must-buy. It's also a great place to start if you've never played the series before but have always wanted to give it a try. And for less than £20 digital, you can't go wrong. Sure, the story mode is short at 12 stages and won't take a seasoned player longer than 90 minutes to clear, but it's not a single playthrough game by any stretch of the imagination. Over the several modes, 17 characters, multiplayer options and online scoreboard, there is an absolute ton of content on offer. I'm having an absolute blast with Streets of Rage 4. I can honestly see it being one of those games that I keep coming back to for 10 minutes here and there for a quick go for a long time to come. And it's made me want to go back and check out the original trilogy to see what I've been missing out on for all these years. So that's it for my Streets of Rage 4 review. Have you played it? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter @GameCupboardRick. So thank you very much for watching and I will see you next time.